with the Jerusalem Connection Red Alert Report airing on July 7th. We have Dr. Matthew Anthony Harper with us today. He's a very special guest from the Intermountain Christian News, also with NEWSRAEL. I will share those links with you on the bottom of the screen. Dr. Harper is a Christian journalist assigned to the White House press detail, and he has a unique insight to the administration, and he's planning travel to Israel just this July, as President Biden will also be in the Middle East. Dr. Harper, thank you so much for your time today and for being able to share your vantage point about the issues surrounding Israel, anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism, and the overall political atmosphere when it comes to Israel. I would love for you to share with our network and viewers briefly about you and your organization and your mission as a journalist and an expert on following human rights issues.
Okay, well, thank you, Amy, for letting me join you today. And a lot of the issues have been addressed at the White House, but this started 20 years ago with a newspaper of previously called Treasure Valley Christian News, expanding to the Intermountain region, one of the largest regional Christian newspapers in the United States. But a special interest is at the White House. That didn't develop as far as the relationship with the White House until about 11 years ago.
Okay.
And so it's been actually very involved with some intense moments regarding the White House over a lot of issues, but especially about Israel.
So explain to us your access to the White House and what you're seeing firsthand in the politics that affect Israel and perhaps Jews all over the world.
Well, the main thing that really stands out to my mind is growing anti-Semitism. With the policies in the White House and the previous Obama administration, the anti-Semitic policies, it's very, very disturbing about what is happening about this anti-Semitism that's on the rise. But the main form of anti-Semitism that I see is treating the Jewish people as if they are occupiers of their land, that this is not their land. And it fuels all this hatred as long as they're portrayed as occupiers. But there are a lot of forms of the definitions of anti-Semitism, but I see it well rooted in that. And there's some warnings about dividing Israel, and the Biden administration is supporting the two-state solution to divide Israel.
And I know that President Biden is preparing to go to the Middle East in a couple weeks in July. I think that might even be next week. What do you want us to be aware of regarding the upcoming Biden visit to the Middle East in July? What should we be praying about, being concerned about as far as policy, and what can we even take action about if possible?
Okay, well, the number one concern that I have is about President Biden pressuring Israel for this two-state solution. Saudi Arabia supports the idea of a two-state solution. The Biden administration has been pushing for a Palestinian consulate in Jerusalem. So I expect for him to bring those issues up, maybe pressure Israel in some way on that matter. And that would create a very serious a problem for Israel. It's a security issue. We know withdrawing from Gaza didn't make it any more peaceful for Israel. Anyone would think that it's going to be more peaceful by Israel withdrawing from land is not, I don't believe, in touch with reality on this matter. A lot of Israeli people, I believe, don't support the division of Israel. And it's not only the Biden administration that support that, but what started here with Jared Kushner and President Trump is promoting this peace plan of dividing Israel, even though they knew probably it would never be accepted. But just the idea of on a map to divide Israel was very disturbing, which I had talked with Michelle Bachmann about.
Oh, wow. Okay. For our audience to be aware, I'm going to be sharing with you Dr. Harper's YouTube channel and highlighting some of the particular episodes where he's had some interactions with particular policymakers and lawmakers. So how is Israel negatively affected by Biden's visit to Saudi Arabia, in addition to the pressure for this two-state solution, which has a host of security issues? Are there any other nuances in what that administration visit is going to bring to the Middle East, and what other issues besides the two-state solution that we should be aware of?
Well, of course, on a lot of people's minds is the oil issue, that Biden is supposed to be there, most likely to, and some concerns, begging Saudi Arabia for help in this matter so that gas isn't so expensive, but I don't see how that could be done. There's also the security issue regarding Iran. For Israel's security, Saudi Arabia, I know, doesn't really care for the Ayatollah and Iran's policy, and they're concerned about the serious destabilization that would happen if Iran actually, send a nuclear weapon over to Israel. The whole Middle East would ignite. So
Right.
somehow, President Biden is going to be talking with him about the Iran situation, and of course, following up the Abraham Accords about more cooperation for the Arab nations and Israel. So.
Well, that's a good point. That brings me to my next question. Have you, I mean, maybe you don't see any insight, but are you aware of any potential positives for Israel that can come out of this visit?
Well, the positives are the economy issue. I mean, more Arab cooperation with Israel. It would be a blessing to Israel for the economic interchange. And so there is that significant issue. And I think also is Israel has been wanting to send natural gas with their Leviathan gas field over to Europe, which actually is a problem that creates with Russia, who would like to have dominance in the natural gas and oil supply.
And that's an interesting thing that you bring up, the sort of the trade negotiations with Europe and what's going on with Russia. Just recently, you were able to, I'm going to share this video link with our viewers so they can watch it directly, but can you tell us a little bit about your interchange with the White House press secretary when you ask them about what's going on with Russia and Ukraine and how that puts pressure on Israel?
Well, first of all, the press secretary has refused to call upon me. So in this situation, their National Security Council person, Rear Admiral John Kirby, was there. And she was trying to control the questions that news reporters got. But a Catholic news reporter yelled out his question. And after that, I yelled out my question and got his attention. But I'm sure that didn't make the press secretary too happy, because she did not want me to get a question in. But that question was about Russia's threatening Israel. Very significant problems with Israelis' aircraft being targeted in Syria. Wow. Israel has been needing Russia's cooperation with bombing of sites in Syria regarding Hamas and weapons stored in. And most recently at the airport, Russia was very upset that Israel ruined the Damascus Syrian airport. Russia has on numerous occasions made threatening overtures toward Israel, and with the energy issue, with Israel wanting to supply alternative energy to Europe, that makes it even much worse. So I'm really concerned about Russia threatening a lot more on Israel, and if they shoot an Israeli aircraft down, we're going to see some major ignition along with so many other things.
Right. So there could be a flashpoint potentially. So as we talk about anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism, particularly, that is sort of this attack against Israel as a state, when it comes to the current happenings under the Biden administration and its policy, are there any particular highlights or topics you want our viewers to be aware of when it comes to anti-Semitism or anti-Zionism and the current administration and its policies, its international policies?
Well, about really concerned about how this has been addressed and opportunities that I've had. It's, anti-Semitism takes on many forms, as I've said earlier. I think about the Jewish cemetery in Vilnius, Lithuania, that has been experienced desecration by Russia and continue by Lithuania. Lithuania exterminated a lot of Jewish people. But the other forms of anti-Semitic, BDS was a big issue with Ben and Jerry. And I've been addressing this UNRWA issue, the UN agency that has been inciting kids to violence against the Jews. And what was miraculous about this, the first week of the Trump administration, is that I'm sitting in another reporter's news seat, and other reporter tries to talk me out of it being there. But because I stayed there, a miracle of God to be able to bring up the misuse of US tax dollars going into the UN agency UNRWA, and a response to that. And that really angered a UN official in Jerusalem, because that question got played on primetime television in Jerusalem. This UNRWA official was upset and contacted me by email. I never responded. So that is one really hot issue. And the Biden administration has wanted to keep that UN agency UNRWA funded.
Right.
But Senator James Risch, who's been the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, he has that money frozen so it can't get to UNRWA. So this is actually something that President Trump defunded as a result of the questions that I had asked there at the White House, and which led to an investigation. President Trump was furious about that idea.
So those funds are still frozen, but the Biden administration is seeking to release them?
They can't at this point release those funds. They're frozen. A technicality issue, which is really good, but it's alarming though that money is going to the Palestinian Authority.
Right.
And I've asked questions about the Palestinian Authority and all this escalated violence and their push for a two-state solution, and so much more. The pay-to-slay program, which some of your viewers are aware of, the Taylor Force Act and its impact on regarding this issues. So I've been able to address different forms of anti-Semitism there at the White House. Miraculously, thank God, I've been able to address that. Makes the White House very uncomfortable, although. So.
Yeah, I'm sure. Get out of their comfort zone for sure. Well, just switching gears a little bit, since you mentioned some of the surrounding political entities and who are in effect terrorist entities around Israel, knowing that you yourself are going to be heading to Israel in July to cover the administration's visit to the Middle East. Can you share with us or identify any anti-Semitism or anti-Zionism that's happening within Israel, inside Israel, simply because they are a free and democratic nation with free speech and freedom of expression? How might that also allow those concepts or those poisons of anti-Semitism drip right into the society directly?
Well, we had some serious problems. There's the problem with the government has, if it hasn't been dissolved now, it will be very shortly. With the previous Prime Minister, Naftali Bennett, he's out. His alternate, Yair Lapid, is in as de facto Prime Minister, but it's very disturbing, though, that he really holds some anti-Semitic views himself. Wow. He is supportive of a two-state solution. I would call it the two-state delusion in this case. So with Lapid in there, I think he'd be very influenced by Biden's trip on this matter of the Palestinian state and the Palestinian consulate in Jerusalem. But what we've also seen in this coalition party of Bennett, a real major problem with people leaving this coalition government, and really disturbing, I think, for a lot of people, is that he had an anti-Semitic Arabs in this coalition government. Wow. So actually, a lot of Arabs in the Knesset hold anti-Semitic views and support the pay-to-slay program. So as long as there is a coalition government with anti-Semitic people, it's never going to work, and it hurts Israel, major security problem.
Wow. So we all need to be praying for that, because we know how the story ends. We're just not exactly sure how we get there. And we're all a part of it in this global economy, this global political spectrum. The Jerusalem Connection recognizes the rights of Israeli citizens for self-determination and their free elections, although we do comment on those events, but we try not to influence them, but we'll pray about them. Dr. Harper, is there any other information, just timely information you'd like us to know as we get into the beginning of July, the heat of the summer, that our viewers can be praying about, can be looking forward to as the elections are gearing up in November, the elections, the midterms in America, so that we can be praying on that now. And of course, we would love to have you back after your visit, maybe at the end of the summer or the early fall, to get some more perspective from you. But do you have any final thoughts for what we can be meditating on?
Well, first of all, prayer for Israel, that they will not cave in. A change of heart for de facto new Prime Minister Lapid, that he will see that the views that he has right now are really related to anti-Semitic policies. Any support of a two-state solution is anti-Israel or anti-Zionist in that sense. So please pray for the leaders in Israel, and they'll be able to make the decisions that need to be made to be a blessing to Israel. We know that there's a special blessing in Genesis 12:3 for those that bless Israel. So to take a look at that. But I want to mention the scripture in Joel 3:2 is the warning of dividing Israel, about God's judgment against those that scatter his people. And so please pray about this issue. And what people can do is contact the White House about their concerns about this through the White House website. They can even send emails. The contact information for the Knesset members is on the internet. People can contact them with their concerns about this and encourage and challenge them on these issues.
That's wonderful advice. We all have a voice now. We're connected with the internet and email, and those web addresses are public, and we can be respectful and loving and still be godly in our perspective and our urging for what the people who influence directly the policies around Israel inside and out, that we can influence those to a positive outcome, a God-willing outcome. Thank you, Dr. Harper. Go ahead.
I guess what I'd like to say finally is about the hot issue about the possibility of Israel bombing Iran's nuclear reactors, which I brought up this at the White House with Biden's communication director, Kate Bedingfield. And she laughed at the idea of Israel bombing Iran's nuclear reactors. And then I got called on by Press Secretary Jennifer Psaki to bring up other Israel issues. So all those are on our website, a YouTube channel.
All right, I am going, like I said, I'm going to share, our audience at home will see the link to your YouTube channel, to that particular video with your exchange just last week about Russia, Ukraine, and I'll post the link to the video where you asked the question a couple of years ago during the Biden administration about UNRWA. So Dr. Harper, we are so excited you were able to join us, and we would love to have you back in the coming weeks as we see how the summer unfolds and the policies unfold, and we gear up for our own midterm elections.
Great to join you, Amy. Looking forward to joining you. I pray for a good outcome of this trip.
Yes, blessings to you and safe travels.